There's a big difference between having a glimpse of reality versus having a permanent realization of reality. A glimpse is when some perceptual filter changes so you can see reality in a different way. You might notice the absence of time in experience. You might notice the absence of a subjective perceiver as your mind thinks of you as, or many other things. And that glimpse can change your entire life. But then there is the end of seeking, which is what I would call permanent realization. And the one thing that seekers are missing is that they are what they are seeking, which is something that's commonly heard everywhere in spiritual traditions. But it's when it's just so clear and so obvious and so absurdly the basics that wherever you are, whatever your experience is made of, this moment is the truth, is reality, is the mystery, is the thing that we were seeking, and that it couldn't ever be other than this. And this is very hard for people to accept. For some reason, it's very hard for us to accept it, because to accept that means that there was just as much truth here as there was in the entire past. Like when I was a 5-year-old kid, there is just as much truth and reality there, living that life, as there is here, and as there is check on your side of the screen. So what causes this switch to happen? And by the way, this is different from someone who's never investigated spirituality ever and just says, well, of course this is reality. Of course this is how it is. Of course this moment is how reality is this moment. Because that is the conceptual framework. But they will still be seeking. They will still be fully engulfed in the discomfort of the illusion that they are not that reality, that they are a separate, independent entity that is inherently flawed and just is uncomfortable to constantly believe that you're that. So they're still seeking in that way. But when it comes to spirituality and seeing through that and accepting the fact that if you're looking for oneness, this is oneness. And this is something my teacher Fred used to say all the time, that we're looking for oneness. We just didn't expect it to be this oneness, because this oneness is kind of mid-tier. There's nothing great about it at first glance. We were looking for the other oneness, which is just completely not possible. That's what oneness means. It means that there is one of them. That's just in the name. This has to be that one. That's where you are what you are seeking comes from. And the problem with that means even when you're feeling shitty, it's still reality. Even when you didn't get what you expected enlightenment or awakening to give you, it's still reality. Even if it's your annoying friend, it's still reality. Even if you get fired from your job, it's reality. Because somehow, when we get into the spiritual seeking dance, our mind projects things that enlightenment will be that it actually isn't. And we can't, until we can come out of denial from that, we will still be seeking it. So that's how the end of seeking happens. It happens when we can clearly see and confront that this is the thing we were looking for. And by this, I mean this very moment. That it couldn't be anything else. That this has to be enough. This has to be enough. And until I worked with my teacher, Fred, actually, I was seeking. I was actively searching for something, for the end of seeking, really. This reality is it, and you're it, and it's a mystery to the mind. But here's the paradox. Because truth is unconditional, truth or reality means what's actually unconditionally true at every moment, even before you thought you were enlightened, or even after, or state A or state B or C. Because it's that, it has to be this, and it has to be not other than you. However, that doesn't mean that you've graduated from spirituality. It doesn't mean that, because you can't graduate from this. You can't graduate from reality. The end of ardently seeking is to see that your whole life was a permanent realization of the truth the whole time. That even when you feel like you lost it, you never really lost it. There was just a sense that you lost it because there was no one to lose it and there was nothing to lose. The truth never moves. But that doesn't mean that practice necessarily ends. That doesn't mean that you graduate to some new level of something. It just means that you saw that it already was a permanent realization at all times. It always was that. And within that, life moves. And life can move in very distorted ways still. Some of the worst moments of my life and worst periods of my life were after this spiritual seeking ended, because it propped up the sense of a floor in my mind. It was a psychological stability point for me. And so when it stopped, because it didn't make any sense anymore that this wasn't it and that there was anything other than this, I had nothing to support me. I couldn't get behind my seeking in the same way. And it opened the door to a lot of shadow work, bad, dysfunctional habits that I had, ways that I wasn't compassionate or carrying myself right in relationships that were dysfunctional. So still, aha moments can happen. We can still learn and have new types of awakenings after the end of seeking. And if you're inspired to do a practice, a relative practice that's going to get relative results, because any practice you do, any result it makes is going to be taken away from you eventually, right? If you're inspired to do it, then do it. Don't neglect it. You can do the practice, but it's just so obvious that this practice will never, ever, ever get you closer to the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal being reality itself, being that divine mystery, because that has to be where you already are and what you're already doing. So a few questions for you. If you're still seeking and you want to end the seeking, and I suggest you ask these questions to yourself with a keen sincerity. Do you intend on seeking forever, or is the seeking a means to an end? If you were to meet the end that seeking were to bring you to, whatever answer you would get, whatever change would happen so the seeking could finally stop, what would that look like? And what form would that come in? Would it come in the form of having a house, or a lot of money, or a particular relationship? Because if you haven't noticed, no experience has ever led to the satisfying ending of your seeking up till now. Every experience you've ever had, everything that you've gotten that you've ever wanted, if you're still seeking, it means none of it worked. So what do you imagine is actually going to work? The next one is, what do you expect to be different after you find what you're seeking? You expect something to be different? And then finally, who is the seeker? Can you find the seeker? Or is there just a spontaneous activity of seeking, mental activity, that's happening in your brain? Is the truth not the same thing that's going to be the same before and after the seeking? The thing that's been true for everybody who ever lived at all times. That same being, that same existence that everything is made of, including every particle of you. Not one particle of anything was ever separate from the truth, because the truth is what is, and there's nothing to understand about it. And then I have one final one for you, which is, what in your human life are you avoiding? Because this spiritual seeking is often based on, at least it was for me, trying to avoid something or fix something first in the human life so that you can go on life and have it easier. For me in particular, I didn't necessarily want to leave college and get a job because I didn't feel like I knew what I should do after college. And I was hoping that the spiritual awakening that I was desperately waiting on was going to give me a Google Maps GPS for life that would show me how to get to the highest place possible. It would say, turn left here, turn right here, turn right here, and I never got that. And until I confronted that this was it and this doesn't have that, I kept seeking. So what are you avoiding in your human life? If this hit, hopefully it hit as disappointment or a sobering moment for you, or you just had fun watching the video. And if that's the case, I hope you have a wonderful day. If you want to talk about this more, you can chat with me, schedule a call in the description. It's free, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.